Coogs house. The last time we saw the Houston Cougar men's basketball team play basketball, we all had a really bad taste left in our mouth. Can we wash that out this weekend?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast all about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. I appreciate you making us first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. You're going to join the conversation, but don't know what to say. Tell us in the comments down below if you can spot Butler University on a map. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We got more on that fun later. We're going to preview Houston and Butler in a kind of abbreviated fashion here. Now, full disclosure, I mentioned I'm a teacher and coach. I coach a high school basketball team. We're in a tournament Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're playing a lot of games on Thursday. The more games we win, the more games we play. I'd like to play a lot of games because that means we're winning a lot of games. I don't know when Friday's episode would get recorded on Thursday because I'd like to be winning games, right? And so I'm recording this as a bonus episode Wednesday night. It might not quite be as long of a preview of Butler, but I'd like to talk about Houston and Butler playing basketball. I know you'd like to talk with me about Houston Cougar playing basketball. So this is our time to do that. I want to make sure we had a time to do that, regardless of what happened in my life on Thursday. And so we'll be doing that now, and you may get more later. You may get more Saturday. And planning on going live after the game, so make sure to subscribe at the bell so you know we're live. And that's where we're at. Again, I wanted to preview this game because Butler looks impressive, to say the least. And again, I wanted to make sure you and I got a chance to talk about it. So I want to spend some time talking about Butler's size, their matchups and lineups, and then kind of spend some time on the magnitude of this game for the University of Houston, the spot they find themselves at right now. I don't. So Butler, quick preview, TLDR, Spark Notes, 7-1 this year, strong defense. Their loss is embarrassing. It's to Austin P, but they've beaten SMU, beaten Northwestern, beaten the top 25 top 25 at the time, Mississippi State as far as P4 games go. That Northwestern one, I want to put an asterisk next to, but they beat Northwestern by 2 points. They had a 15-point lead in the second half of that game, and it blew it. But they hit a three, got a quick steal, and had a game-winning layup to win that basketball game, actually. And so they did win. They did win it. I'm giving them credit for winning it. Butler's defense, though, is the kind of thing that for an offense that's had the kind of hiccups Houston's had throughout the season could be worrisome. This could be a very low-scoring game. This could be 55-50 kind of stuff, right? This could be an ugly, grinded-out kind of game. Now, their size is a big reason they do slow it down and play good defense. They start three guys that are 6'6", 6'7", 6'9". I am most impressed by Pierre Brooks, 6'6", 240 pounds, shoots 44% from the three-point line, get 14.5 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game. And I say 6'6", 240. The dude looks legitimately like an NFL defensive end. He's a big, strong-bodied guy. Matchup nightmare. Again, he can shoot, so you got to go cover him on the perimeter. He mostly gets the ball on the perimeter. But if you put some little dinky guard on him, he's going to put him in the paint, right? And so it's a matchup problem. He also, I thought, was impressive for a guy that big out on the perimeter, plays incredibly under control. He's never off his own pace. It's hard to get him to do things he doesn't want to do. And Houston's got to focus kind of on getting Pierre Brooks hurried up. And by that I mean you got to kind of be the first team in the clips I've seen this year. And I only watched, admittedly, the Northwestern and SMU games, and they were on like condensed. They were kind of fast. But Houston would be the first team to hurry him up this year, and they kind of have to focus on it. I would like to put Jalen Roberts on him. But I think he's got to guard the other traditional bigs. And so I think that means in our current starting lineup, unless you made an alter to the starting lineup, an alteration, I think you've got to put Emmanuel Sharp on him just from a strength standpoint. He's a big, strong guy. And so does that mean Sharp's the only perimeter guy with that kind of muscle on his bone? Do you risk putting Sharp on a big because maybe they're less talented offensively and putting Jalen on them for the size? Again, matchup nightmare, but I do think Houston can use their speed to rush him and get him off of that pace that he dominates games with so much. Their high points per game now is Telfort. He's the 6'7" guy of the three starting guys that I talked about. He's getting 17.5 points per game. He's 6'7", 220, and he is more of the focal point of the offense. They run a lot more sets for him and stuff like that. And, I think he's probably the more pro prospecty kind of guy, just looks more like an NBA basketball player, 6'7", 225. So still a big, strong guy. And I think that, he's going to get between 15 and 20. Houston does a great job of shutting other teams' best players down. I don't mean to say they can't do it. I just mean to say that he's kind of feels like he can do a lot of different things well. He's not like, oh my gosh, at any of them, but he's very good at a lot of them. And so he probably gets his 12 to 15, even in a low scoring game, like I anticipate this one being. I think because he does more traditional post things, he's the guy you end up putting Jawan Roberts on, because then you put Sharp on Pierre Brooks. So Jahmyl Telfort, I think, is the Jawan Roberts matchup. But that is another tough one, because if you were to put Roberts on Brooks for the size, do you put Sharp on Telfort? Those back and forth. Unless you alter the starting lineup, that was a whole other set of questions. Patrick McAfee and McCaffrey. McAfee is the guy that's on ESPN, right? Patrick McCaffrey is a lesser used big, but he's still getting double-digit points per game. He's a 6'9", 215, but looks thin by comparison to the guys standing next to. A lot of putbacks, those kind of like quick post entries and drop offs and that kind of stuff. Doesn't do a whole lot of creation on his own, but is a big guy around the basket a lot of the time. That's, to me, Javier Francis allows him to kind of be the roaming backside help guy a lot of times on drives, as well as be around the basket for rebounds. If you were to alter the starting lineup, I would say put Tugler there, Francis on Telfort, and Roberts on Pierre Brooks. I don't know if they're going to alter starting lineup, but I could see a mega big lineup at some point in this. The biggest advantage, though, when you see a team bigger than yourself, is to put ball pressure on the other guards and hope you win the matchup before it ever gets the big fellas, right? That's typically how an undersized basketball team would do this. And Houston's not necessarily undersized, but they will be in this matchup, right? And so ball pressure is going to be, can you handle ball pressure? Can you put on ball pressure without fouling? Yes, I said that. Can you put on that ball pressure without fouling? Because every game Houston has lost, they've had foul trouble from Miles Uzan, from another guard at least, and sometimes also from a big. They've got to find a way to play physical with these guys, rush them, speed them up, etc., without fouling. Now, playing at home will be a huge advantage in that. It's the environment can help create the rushed feeling for guys that are traveling through it. You also, I think, see deeper rotations at home. A lot of people talk about Mercy Miller and him getting in the game and stuff like that. You notice he's had no trouble getting at home games. You typically see that out of a young guy, especially even if Houston's trying to fast forward his progress or he's ready to go by as a true freshman by Big 12 play. Mercy is going to be ready, I imagine, at some point soon for a lot more minutes, but doing it at home is a more comfortable place than neutral sites and road games and so on. I think you'll see more Mercy in this game. He's also, for what's worth, a 6'4" guard. So we talk about big teams. I don't think Mercy gets outsized in this matchup at all. And I think he's talent-wise good enough to play in it. So I think there's a lot of things going on there. It's no secret I'm a big fan of Terrance Arceneaux. I think he's an NBA player. I can't believe we bring him off the bench, except for the fact that he tore Achilles last year. But I think Terrance is a big deal in this game. Terrance's positional versatility to play the offensive 3, the defensive 4, cover big guys bigger than him because of his length and athleticism. I really think, while I understand why he comes off the bench because of the Achilles injury, if he's at a 22-minute, you can't play more than 22 minutes. You got to really intentionally use those 22 minutes. He feels like a match that's going to be important in this one because he can cover guys much bigger than him and makes up for a lot of ground with his quickness and long arms as a perimeter guy, right? And so I really think Terrance is going to be important in this one. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, Milos, obviously LJ, those guys have to be the focal points offensively. Things got to go through them. And at some point this season, we're going to have to find someone with that, quote, dog in them. And I want to talk some about that and the magnitude of this one in a second. But first, I want to tell you about a new buddy we got over at Mint Mobile, because I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through hot coals or walk through a Kelvin Sampson practice and get yelled at or whatever just to save a few bucks. I'm not that crazy. It has to be easy, no hoops to jump through, hoops to score, maybe not hoops to jump through. When Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with a purchase of a 3-month plan, we all at Locked On decided to call him on it. I called him on it, and it turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process is actually canceling your old provider. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege, and you'll see that right now all 3-month plans are only $15, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your own phone number along with all your existing contacts and so on with you. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer, you get a 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month. Go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. $45 upfront payment required. New customers on a first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes and fees restrictions apply. See mintmobile.com for details. Parker Ainsworth with the Locked On Coogs here, previewing in a bonusy feeling episode Houston and Butler this weekend. We talked through what Butler's got going on, but I think it's also important to know what Houston's got going on. Houston, to put it simply, has played like crap to start the year. I don't think I'm putting words in anyone's mouth and saying that. They, in big games and games against tough opponents, have kind of had very, rough waters trying to find themselves. And here's the thing, I'm not upset by that. We knew that was going to happen. They lost the best player in America last year to the NBA draft, and they've got to replace him. You don't replace him by just saying we brought a new point guard. Milos is great, but there is only one Jahmyl Shed, right? And so you're looking at this year's team trying to find out who's that guy when they're on the road in Austin like they were last year, or when they're on the road in Lubbock, when they're on the road in Provo, Utah, all these different places where Jahmyl Shed put on the cape, grabbed his backpack, said, "Get in, we're going downhill, we're taking this thing over." 29 in Austin, the big overtime shots, like those kinds of things happen with Jahmyl. I'm not saying it has to be Milos because he's the positional replacement, but there needs to be someone that when there's a 2-minute stretch where Houston has trouble finding a basket and there's kind of bleeding points on the other end, and so they just need to slow the game down and kind of get the momentum back. Somebody has to be the guy that says, "I'm doing that for us. I got us." Now, there's moments where I think Terrance can do that. There's moments where I think Emmanuel can do that. There's moments where, because he scores a lot of the points, LJ Cryer can do that. There's moments where looks like J1 Roberts can do that. There's also moments where they don't. I think that's the uncomfortable part is Jahmyl did it every time. That's why he's Jahmyl. And so, again, I know we talk a lot about replacing him, and I think people in the comment section kind of get sick of talking about replacing him because you have to just move on. But that's, the thing that's visibly missing. And the magnitude of this game is it's kind of your last chance before conference play to figure that out. You got a pretty cupcakey schedule between now and playing Oklahoma State to open up Big 12 play on December 30th. Like a lot of cupcakes, a lot of practice time too. And frankly, we've seen that they have this problem, they have this issue. They run into these walls, these hurdles, these speed bumps against good teams. They don't do it against Texas A&M Corpus Christi, right? So Butler served as your last non-conference chance to really figure that out. And I'm not saying Butler is Auburn or Alabama. I think Auburn and Alabama are going to be making runs where one of those teams is probably a Final Four team, right? I really, and I don't really want to blow smoke to those guys, but I think one of them will be, right? I'm not a big Nate Oates fan, but that's a good basketball team. I'm not personally a big Bruce Pearl fan. That's a good basketball team, right? I'm not saying Butler's that, but Butler's good. They might not be Final Four good. We'll see, but they're good. And you got to use this as an opportunity to figure that out, right? I don't mean to make it a get right game. And I don't necessarily mean that this team is going to have just 3 or 4 losses like last year's team was. But a big part of last year's team was their losses fueling their wins, right? They lost first 2 road games of the Big 12 to TCU and Iowa State. And in both of those games, you had moments where it wasn't Jahmyl, right? Against TCU, Damian Dunn came down and instead of passing the ball back to Jahmyl, he tried to isolate and get his own basket, try to be the guy. Didn't work. Against Iowa State, you get to the final play of the game, final defensive play. Mama Slovic or whatever, he scores on Emmanuel Sharp. They come down and they drop a play that was going to result in either a Sharp or a Cryer 3, and they miss and end up losing the game in Ames. And then very quickly it's okay. Who's it going to be? Let's fall back to Jahmyl, default to Jahmyl, right? We've lost a couple games now, figuring things out, and we've got to find out what that next thing is now, right? What is the next step for this team? And it's, I don't mean to say that again, this team has to only lose 3 or 4 games like last year and spend chunks of the year ranked number 1 in America and so on. Frankly, while there have been injuries and stuff like that, we've seen that you don't want to be peaking too early either and be number 1 team in America for January and February and then losing the Sweet 16. The goal is to make it to April, right? And San Antonio. And that might mean peaking later in the season, right? And that might mean figuring yourself out in December, figuring yourself out in November, and then perfecting it in January and fine tuning it in February, and then showing it all off in March. And I don't think that's a bad place to be. I don't think that Houston's in a bad place either. I think a lot of people that are very reactionary to looking at like, well, they lost San Diego State. That's all done. It's like, yeah, they did. But that doesn't mean everything's from the game is bad. You don't want to throw babies out with bathwater. So I think that there's a lot on the line in this game, not just because it's a good opponent, but because it's the last good or potentially top. What in KenPom they are 58, so their last top 100-ish team in KenPom Houston going to play until Big 12 play. They played Troy December, they're 124th, Toledo's 211, A&M Corpus Christi 187, right? Then they get to the Big 12 and no one is lower than 88. Right, I mean that's a big difference. It's a big gap, and then you have teams in there in the single digits range as well because of the Baylors and the Kansases and so on. Houston doesn't have problems. I don't mean to make those metaphors or whatever, but Houston does need to figure these things out. And the size of this game is, unless you start figuring out a Big 12 play, you got to kind of start now, right? And I think they win this game. I think it's a low scoring game. I think it's like 58-52. I think Houston does end up winning at home. And I think the ugliness of it mostly is because it's the only reason it would ever be that low scoring. But I'm looking for more qualitative things that happen in this game than the final score, right? I think Houston does win, but I just what led them to it Saturday afternoon is going to be really important to me. Now, again, I hope we're talking more later today about Houston and Baylor, except that would mean I lost basketball game, so maybe I don't. But either way, we'll be live after the Baylor game here at Locked On Cougs, break down whatever just happened, really more react than break down. It takes kind of a second watch to break some stuff down sometimes. But Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast about all things Houston Cougars, part of Locked On Podcast Network, is your team every day. Go Cougs.